get going. So, hello everybody. Thank you to everybody who's already here. Welcome to the Recruitment Coaching Couch Sessions webinar. I've practiced that a few times. Thanks for joining us. This is webinar number 4, I believe, in our continued discussion around recruitment tips, advice and support. So this is part of a series of webinars that we'll be providing for our audience over the next couple of months. I am Oliver Perry. I'm a consultant here at Trust and Soda, part of the Trinnovo group. Trinnovo group is made up of 3 brands, including Trust and Soda. We specialise in IT, Broadgate search within finance and governance, and also buyer talent within the life sciences sector. So as we all know, the job market is in a flux. We are potentially in a period of uncertainty through the next few months and the next few months back. How the market will evolve is yet to be seen, but we're hoping to host these webinars to talk about, from a candidate experience, what we could be doing and what support we could be offering candidates at this time. So whether you're facing redundancy, whether your job has been affected, whether you're just genuinely interested in the best practice about searching proactively for a new role, hopefully you're in the right place. So today, the main areas for discussion are, we're going to talk about the importance of having a buddy and a mentor. We're going to talk about some tips and advice and tools for upskilling yourself during this period, and then linking all that into how you can develop skills like confidence and other personal attributes as well as your professional attributes. Housekeeping to start with: everybody who's entered, apart from the panelists, will be muted upon entry. But please, we would love this to be as engaging as possible. So using the Q&A function on Zoom and the chat function on Zoom, any questions at any point throughout this, please feel free to pop them into them. I will go straight and I'll police them and get them questions answered as soon as they land in there. So to introduce our panel, we have a very special guest in the top left of my screen anyway, in Jeremy Snell. And as always, we are joined by Alex and Taylor from here at Trinnovo Group. So I'll start with Jeremy. I'll let him introduce himself first.
Hi everyone. As Ollie says, my name is Jeremy Snell. I've spent the last too many years, 25 years, working in the recruitment industry, the last 10 of which, ironically, I've been a face-to-face trainer, which brings its own challenges when we have social distancing. So over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, I've been running a website called Recruiting in Lockdown, which is an online platform to be able to support the recruitment industry at what is a very interesting time.
Thank you, Jeremy. Taylor?
So I'm Taylor. I work at Buyer Talent, which is our specialist life science brand, focusing on project management on the contract side of the market.
Alex?
I'm Alex. I work for Broadgate Search, which is the financial services sector, and I recruit for financial crime.
Lovely. Right. So we're going to start nice and broad, and we're going to start with our special guest Jeremy with the first question, and talk about upskilling is a phrase people are using a lot at the moment in general, in terms of having more time to potentially do things that they weren't doing before. But from your side, Jeremy, what are the benefits in terms of utilising this time to help yourself upskill?
I think even if we remove the whole COVID scenario and we just think about upskilling, I've got to start by thinking about what happens if we don't, because if we're not focused on some form of personal development or upskilling from a professional capacity, the danger is that we can start to flatline in terms of the level of satisfaction that we get from our job, the level of challenge that we feel that we have, and as we start to flatline, we can start to stagnate, and then eventually we end up being comfortable because we've flatlined at operating at a certain skill level or certain capability. And I think it's one of the challenges within recruitment is that too often people's experience is described in years of tenure rather than truly looking at the experience that people have. So if somebody starts to feel that they are upskilling because they've been doing a job for longer, you can end up with 5 years of tenure, but potentially only having 5 lots of 1 year's experience because you've not done anything different, or you've not pushed yourself to continue to be able to develop and grow. So when you flip that to look at the benefits of upskilling, the whole ethos is about incremental improvement, so that you feel the reward of doing the job, which is more than the reward of being paid, the actual self-challenge that comes from it. And I often ask people who work in recruitment, if you were to look back over the last 3 months and think about where you've upskilled, what do you feel you're actually better at now than you were 3 months ago? Because if you'd focused on getting 1% better at that thing every day, in 3 months, you'd be 90% better. And if you think about, what am I 90% better at today because I decided 3 months ago to upskill in it, not everyone would be able to find something to put on the list.
Absolutely. I think the correlation between upskilling or being skilled and time is really interesting. Like you mentioned there, and something you will see a lot, people saying, I've done this for X amount of years, I am this, and I've done this for X amount of years. But it's not always perfectly correlated, your skill with tenure, is it? And like you say, you can do something in a day that somebody may have not done in a year. So yeah, it's really interesting. And we kind of upskilling, if we take 2 paths of upskilling, so we talk about job centric and personal development, obviously they have massive overlaps. Loads of personal development upskilling will affect your ability to go where you need to do in your career. But if I label the next question to you, Taylor, in terms of, if you were to focus on your job centric skills, what tips and tools would you consider in kind of upskilling in those areas?
So first of all, by job centric, we're talking about technical skills as opposed to potentially softer skills like time management or communication capabilities. So as I'm sure you all know, companies invest a lot of time and money in upskilling their employees in various ways in line with their individual corporate aims. But with the labour market being more and more competitive, I found a lot more people are working a lot harder to actually upskill themselves outside of a corporate environment. So this can be very specific to your job. If you're a BI developer, completing a Tableau course to go alongside the softwares you're already proficient in, which makes you directly more employable, as you can now offer that to your skill set and apply to more positions within that which require that skill. Or more holistic upskilling, like taking a Prince 2 project management course, which could help you go into more senior positions. It could help with day-to-day operational tasks that you complete, while still making you more attractive to your employer. Or it could be things like learning a new language to penetrate a new marketplace. So I actually focus on Switzerland, which, although it's predominantly English speaking, they normally require some level of French, German, or Italian, depending on location, to go alongside that. So it can really open doors to global positions, new locations. And these are the 3 main things that I've seen people upskilling in. As I focus on a contract market, one of the constant questions I face from hiring managers is, what has the consultant been doing for this 3 or 6 month period of downtime? Hiring managers, although they are starting to more and more recognize that time isn't necessarily the only factor, like Jeremy said, tenure isn't the definition of what makes somebody more or less skilled than someone else. They do still have a problem with gaps in employment. And the easiest way to come back to that question when someone asks it is to say, well, they've actually been upskilling in this, they've been completing this course, or they've been growing in this way, to make sure that it doesn't look like downtime where it shows unemployability effectively, because that's why they ask that question, to find out, is there a reason this individual has not gained a new contract or permanent role for the last 6 months? And it's really important to be able to go back to them and say, actually, they've been upskilling in this area. Not only for that, but also you do want to be making the most of the downtime you have between jobs to make sure you are getting the most out of that time and developing professionally the best you can, ready for those future challenges. In terms of the tools, I'll actually go on to that later, just because that's actually a specific area. But that's kind of a reason for upskilling. And I think
How's
now
your
more than ever.
how's your German? Are you getting better at German?
So one of the tools I recommend is actually something that I've been using daily. I think Jeremy's analogy previously, if you will get better 1% a day for 3 months, I quite like that, because I think my German might be at that level. So yeah, slightly, but not yet.
Getting there. And then the other side of it then, so talking about personal development, and yes, it will potentially always link to your career path and your career potential, but also a heavy weight in terms of your welfare and your mental health. So I'll direct the next one to Alex, really, in terms of the same question, tips and tools on upskilling, but really more considering your personal development rather than any job-centric skills. I don't know if you have any tips on that.
Whenever I think of personal development, I tend to advise people to really just think what their goal is and then work backwards and what you would need to do. So I use this example a lot. Everyone on my LinkedIn knows that I dance salsa and all that stuff. So obviously I'm going to mention it. But yeah, from a mental health point of view, having things outside of your job that you can actually also develop in. So with me, I like salsa. I was going to lessons all the time. I now do them at home. And it's just something, it is a skill of development. If you can implement that in your hobbies, whether you're cooking, whether you're dancing, whether you're doing, I don't know, other forms of sport, fitness, just implement that type of mentality into your personal development in your career. And to kind of relate it back to the career thing, I would say, if you're out of a job now, think about the role that you want to go into. And if it requires extra things, work backwards and say, okay, I need this or I need that. And then ask your network or people that you know, and just ask them, how did you get to that position? What have you worked on? What courses did you do? What can you advise me on? And then the other example, you guys know this more than anything, but I never used to put content out on LinkedIn before. Never done it in my life. And now I ask.
Now you're the queen.
Now I post a little bit. But one of the things I did is I asked our CEO, like, look, I really want to do some courses on this, or I want to develop this. You know, do we have anything? And we did. So now I'm doing that. I used my network, my manager, in order to upskill myself and do it that way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When we all started to go into lockdown and working from home, you saw an initial shift of content on LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever you were looking, of I'm learning this language, I'm doing this skill, I'm going to get this qualification. And then it started to dissipate a little bit, and then people started realizing, or that's how I could see it, that you don't need to be using every single minute of this time to be all about your CV or all about your career skills. And the more personal development things were coming through that were linking to your welfare and your mental health in this period, really. I know obviously for you, Jeremy, personal development is a big part of what you do. Obviously your specific training offering, but also there's a heavy link there to the kind of personal development side and the importance of that in a time like this.
Yeah, totally. And I think that it's being able to decide if I want to get better at something, whatever that something is, whether it's using Duolingo to learn German, or it's getting better at salsa dancing, or it's becoming a better dart player, or becoming better at forensic accounting. It isn't going to happen just because you've decided you wanted it to happen. You've got to break it down to be able to say, if I did short bursts of learning and I sequence those bursts of learning in the right order so that we set the foundations in the right place, we've then got an upskilling journey that we've mapped out, that with the right support of the right technology or the right mentor or the right inspiration in terms of a buddy, the learning gets its own inertia. My son's 19 and he doesn't play any musical instruments. but he's tried the guitar, he's tried drums, he's tried the recorder, he's tried the piano. Just with this expectation that
And now
I
you've
can't
kicked
play
him
the,
out the house.
yeah, I can't play the guitar, so I must be a pianist. And then he watches somebody on YouTube playing the piano and thinks, right, I've got it worked out. And because it didn't just all land at one time, he's misappropriating talent for something which is natural rather than talent which is something that is practiced.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it kind of links in terms of getting where you want to be in those certain scenarios, if it's a talent or not, obviously attributes such as your confidence is going to be a part of that. And I know we spoke about it before, Alex, but just tips on how to develop your self-confidence in times like this, and how to utilize that in terms of upskilling.
How to develop your confidence?
Yeah.
It's such a broad question, but oh God. When I was thinking about it, Jeremy kind of touched on it, but I would look at it in small chunks of achievement, because if you have a goal and you say, that's it, I want to learn Spanish, you are not going to learn Spanish overnight. Simple. But if you learn a new word, small, manageable, smart objectives, that's been around for ages. If you say, right, I'm going to learn 5 adjectives today, I'm going to learn 2 more tomorrow. Don't put pressure on yourself saying you're going to read a whole dictionary or anything like that. But these small, measurable achievements that you can actually, they're attainable and you can get them, they will increase your confidence that you are going to get there. So I would say set yourself small, achievable goals that you can definitely do them. And then that's one tactic that can increase your confidence in what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
At least that helped me. I don't know. Feel free to share.
Was there measurable goals you were setting yourself when you were kind of going into the world of creating content and stuff? Because obviously that relates to me a little bit in terms of the link to confidence, to doing something out of your usual external. So did that help you in terms of setting yourself goals and measurables to now being content queen?
Yeah, I gave myself a goal. If I can do 1 video a week of something that's relevant to the market, see how it goes, see what the market is saying, and then if it's received well, then push for 2, and then post every other day or something like that. But I think with doing LinkedIn content, you have to be very, very confident in the sense that you're going to get criticized, people are going to judge you, they're not going to agree with all of your opinions, and you just have to be confident enough that you are adding value to at least one person. That's more of a mental barrier though, I think.
So just to round off, well, not round off, but kind of bookend the upskilling element of it, because the other half of the topic that I think will link very heavily, we'll go into talking about buddies and mentors and how we can utilize those and link them to upskilling from a personal point of view. But I know, Taylor, you spoke about some job-centric upskilling tips earlier. Is there any tools or platforms that you've particularly used or you'd advise using for specific upskilling?
Yeah, so there are a vast amount of tools and platforms available, but obviously these are very specific to specific needs. So for tech development, you've got things like Udemy, Codebase, for languages, Duolingo, Rosetta Stone. For project management, API accreditation, Prince2 accreditation. Instead of just providing an endless list of things which you can find on Google, I thought I'd provide advice of how best to find those relative most to you. So the best way, and something I've actually done in the past, would be find what I call your industry idols. So people who are further ahead in their career than you are in positions which you would like to one day be in. Have a look on their LinkedIn, have a look on any information they've got online, and just see what certifications, what courses they've done, which has aided their process of getting there. That's a really easy way to find out which ones are actually specific for your function. Like Alex mentioned earlier, go to your network, post on LinkedIn saying that you are looking to upskill in this area. Does anyone have any recommendations? Has anyone worked with the following websites? Ask anyone you know who is in a position you'd want to be in. So people who have actually done what you are aiming to do. And that's the best way you'll find how they achieve getting better and how you can achieve it.
Yeah, I really agree.
Can I add something to that, Ollie? But I think that anyone who's arrived at that destination where you're looking at them and thinking, that's the model or that's the path, they probably got there with a mentor. So now that they've moved from being a mentee and somebody's coming to them with that help me kind of approach, they'll probably quite appreciate the value of becoming a mentor to somebody, or at least giving them some kind of advice on this is what I would recommend that you do to begin your journey of upskilling in that area. I did that I looked at online training companies and I found what I thought was the largest online training company in the UK. And I sent the chief exec a message saying, I'd like to talk to you about how you built your business. And he gave me 45 minutes of his time. But,
I mean, just a question, see, how would you define a mentor? Like, what would you say a mentor does?
So a mentor is somebody who you form a relationship with over what I would consider to be a more longer term period of time, like a 6 or 12-month period, and you share together the goals that you have as a mentee, and you agree a working relationship as to how they can support you through that. They don't necessarily have had to have followed the path, although it helps if they've been down that path, but they should be able to ask you the challenger questions that help make sure that you're focused on doing the right things at the right time to get to where you want to be. So there needs to be kind of a mutual respect between the two of you. And the mentor is less likely to be, if I were you, this is what I would do, and far more asking questions about what are the options that you have available and what do you see as being the next steps.
That's my own notes. Thank you.
I think the topic the topic of a mentor is really interesting when we talk about. I think sometimes if there's people on here that are thinking about getting a mentor or have had a mentor, sometimes you can think about it as someone to help you get to where you need to be. So it can be seen as a one-way street. Okay, I'm here, you're here, help me get there, kind of thing. And sometimes looking at it from the view of a mentor, looking at it from a mentor towards a mentee, it always has to be a two-way engagement. What's in it for them, and it's not about what's in it for them in terms of where their career is going, but it's not all about the give. It's not all about the take. And if you go to a mentor and you're like, I'm not very good at this, can you make me better? There's a very different conversation rather than going to say, look, I really want to get better at this. This is what I've done to get better at this. I can see you are here. How can you help me get there? And creating that confidence really in that relationship actually working. Because I think, some people do it wrong by almost saying, okay, I want to get there, will you tell me how to get there, kind of thing, rather than it being a two-way relationship. And it's not meant to be a shortcut. It's not meant to be relatively easy, I don't think. I think
it should feel challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we talk about the buddy in the phrase of in the notes of this webinar. We're going to talk about the buddy system as well. So I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts really on their separation or the difference between what they would see as somebody as a buddy and maybe what they would see as somebody as a mentor.
I'm a big fan of buddy systems, but I see them being much more welfare orientated. I'm working with a couple of companies at the moment where they have employees who are still at work doing the job, albeit from home, and they have a proportion of their team who are on furlough, and everyone who is on furlough has a furlough buddy. So their furlough buddy is somebody else within their business outside of their team who's been furloughed.
Yeah.
And they check in with each other to make sure that they're feeling healthy or strong, or their well-being through that process. is being spoken about without it feeling as though it's either being judged by their manager or being reported back to somebody else as if it were becoming part of a KPI process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and I might be wrong in saying this, I always perceive a buddy to almost be an internal in your immediate network kind of function, and maybe a mentor to be somebody that is not going to be in your immediate network, and hence the value add that they would give. Is that a fair assessment of how you'd differentiate the two? Or
a buddy is more likely to be somebody who has immediate empathy with your current situation. So you're kind of peers as buddies. So like if you're a new starter in a company and there is a formal buddy system, that buddy is likely to be somebody who's been through the induction in the previous 3 to 6 months, because it's fresh and they've been there and they remember emotionally what it was like at the end of the first week, or they remember what it was like at pay time, and you know all of how to read their pay slip without somebody feeling like how do I ask this question to my manager. So buddies are very much we've been through the same moment of time at the same place as peers, whereas a mentor could be someone who is outside of your immediate working network but could be still within your own business, but somebody who's a little more advisory and a bit more of a counsel to your decision-making process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did some research. So from a mentoring point of view, you will hear about it a lot. Some people may have seen the benefit of it. Some people may have never seen the benefit of a mentor and may not understand why or how, I guess. And potentially the how is, what would you do? What would you do if you said, right now, after this webinar, I feel that the benefit of a mentor in my life may help me get work to where I need to be, if that's a new job or upskill or whatever, and how I would go about that. So some things that I personally would advise is the initial stage of research is really important in terms of what you want somebody for, what is the purpose of the mentor for you, and ensure that your research and going out there to find those right people is done correctly to start with, rather than to be a blanket approach of people with the right job title. The research has to be there to begin with. Referrals and recommendations would always be a first port of call. The advice I would give in terms of mentors naturally, who do you know within first, second or third connections, if we use the LinkedIn reference for external, who would you know that maybe has done something similar before? And then the other thing I was thinking of is the patience element of it. Is when you go to somebody asking them to be your mentor, make sure they understand the benefit to them, make sure they understand where you're at, but also have a bit of patience with it. It's not a one phone call job. You're going to ring Jeff Bezos and he's going to tell you how to run the most successful business in the world. It's have a bit of patience in finding that right mentor. Alex Taylor, I don't know if you've got any experience.
I think it's a great idea. I've not really had the chance to be mentored. My question, Jeremy, would be that initial conversation. Obviously, it worked out well for you in that case where you messaged him and he was nice enough to give you 45 minutes of his time. Is there any advice you'd give for somebody who's found a few potential mentors, people they idolize within the industry, how best to approach them and how to actually face potential rejection?
How best to approach them, I think, is just being very, very open in terms of what the goal is in terms of the communication, and positioning things so it's not trying to create some sense of altruism. It's about a cooperative, mutual conversation to seek some guidance and some advice that could then turn into a mentor relationship. So that guy who I messaged, it never turned into a mentor-mentee thing. I sent him a message saying, I'd really appreciate your advice on something, because it looks as though you've carved a really nice niche in what you're doing. When would you have 5 minutes that I could pick your brains? So it was kind of softly. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Without it being, hey, will you be my mentor for the next 6 months? So if you're looking at somebody and thinking they would be a great mentor, I think you'd need to start with, well, let's explore to see if there's any kind of synergy that we could have in terms of a conversation, and then start to table it. But I go back to what I said before. I think if somebody's proven that they have capability to do something, they're likely to have had some form of formal or informal mentor relationship themselves, and therefore would recognize the benefits of being able to pay it back. And it isn't altruistic because it helps them to upskill themselves. Does that make sense? The moment that they enter that mentor relationship, this could be the first time that they're doing it, or something that they've recognized as being an opportunity to develop themselves, and yeah, both parties should benefit.
I think we've had a question, Jeremy, that may be linked to your attendance here. So I'll ask it in two ways really, because Frank Pilkington, thanks for the questions, and anybody else, please ask some questions in the chat function. So Frank Pilkington, Jeremy, has asked, what advice would you give to somebody who's starting their own recruitment agency? So I'll ask it in two folds really, as the question is read, but also potentially linking that to somebody who may be in a position where they want to utilize this time to start something new. There's a lot of opportunity potentially for people to change direction from being the employee to the employer. If we try and link it to upskilling buddies and mentors, would you have any advice, recruitment agency specific or other?
Well, yeah, of course. Look, I'll answer directly about starting a recruitment agency, but also just anything which becomes a new venture, whether you decide that you can self-challenge by having a bit of a side hustle that's doing something else alongside what you're already doing. I'd recommend, firstly, be really clear with yourself as to why you're doing it for you. Because there's going to be, whatever it is that you start, there's going to be tough times with it. And you've got to be able to hold on to why you're doing it in the first place to lift you up and to keep you moving you forward. And then when you've decided why you're doing it, be really clear on why you've picked the marketplace that you've decided to go into, with some form of litmus test to make sure that there is not necessarily space in it, but there is something that looks as though it could accommodate a new startup, and that you've got clarity as to why anyone who's already buying from somebody else would buy from you, which is the fundamentals of having a sales plan and a marketing plan that I think is far more important than going off and building a website. Because if you haven't got your sales and marketing plan, then it becomes vanity to build a website, when really you haven't got a business case as to why you would go about doing it.
Yeah, and I guess the why answers that question in every form of starting a new venture. I guess if your why is because I'm out of a job, mm-hmm. then it maybe is not the why that will get you to where you want to be if you're starting your own agency, or if you're starting an ice cream shop, or whatever it may be. If the why is I've got nothing else to do.
Yes, which feels more for me that becomes a way-based motivation. So if you're doing something to avoid something, long term you don't have a reason to pursue it, because all you want to do is to escape something else. So if you decide I need another job because I want to escape this, and then you do something to escape something, and you're not doing it because you really wanted the thing that you went towards, it'll never fill you with the energy and momentum that you need to keep on pushing and doing it, compared to if I want to do this for me because, and you've got something which is more of a draw and a magnet to make you want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a bit of a off-topic question, Frank, but that's cool. But we wanted to make sure we answer everyone who chimes in. So thank you for that, Frank. Any other questions from anybody watching? Please feel free to add them in. So we touched on it briefly, Jeremy, and the phrase of a welfare buddy. Then, so we talked about buddies and mentors for your career. but the welfare buddy is a system, I guess, was used pre-furlough, like you mentioned, new starters, etc. But potentially is a function and a feature that may have adapted post-furlough and have different responsibilities. Recruitment and non-recruitment, what would you identify, I guess, the current role and responsibilities of a welfare buddy, and how does it benefit the employee at the moment?
Well, right now, I think that there is ample opportunity for people to feel even more isolated than they already do, because you don't have the colleagues and the team around you necessarily. And if you start to feel isolated, that you have certain feelings about that you're not aware that others do too. Like, everyone can project on LinkedIn, things are great and everything's rosy, and Facebook is full of, look at what I cooked for dinner, and all of the kind of sound bites of my life is awesome, without actually seeing the bits that are in between, like all of the crud that happens between those two photos on Instagram or those updates on LinkedIn. And that's where a welfare buddy is there to be able to just have the empathy to know exactly what it feels like to be there, and to be able to help pick people up and to be picked up in return when they're feeling like as one's up and one's down. Just that sense of camaraderie.
Yeah. And link it, Alex, I don't know if you've got an opinion on that in terms of from a personal, not personal development, but your personal welfare, any experience in a welfare buddy or a buddy in general, if it's out of work, in work, any experience from your side?
I think it's not a bad thing to have someone that you can go vent to, moan about. Everyone's got their own, no, genuinely, everyone's got their own issues at work. It's not paradise all the time. And if you've got that person, you can call up and just be like, mate, I've had a freaking horrendous day today. And then they understand why and all that kind of stuff. It's a massive thing off your chest. Mm-hmm. And then you can think, right, I'm going to go have a beer now, relax, and start again tomorrow. And I think it's a brilliant idea. And I do that with, a couple of people who have been furloughed, and I'm in touch with them all the time. It's a good thing.
I think a point, Alex, sorry, go on, Jeremy.
No, I was going to say it should feel totally non-judgy.
Yeah.
That it's just that sounding board, or that reservoir to absorb some of it. And it made me think, as you were describing it, I've seen the opposite happen accidentally, that you can end up with a neg buddy. and I've seen neg buddies who, like, even pre-COVID would choose to go for a cigarette together and neg each other out, but they buddy up to make sure that, I hope you're not enjoying work as much as I'm not enjoying work. And they'd have a cigarette to talk about why they hate work, and reinforce with each other through a buddy system that it's okay to not like your job, and then go back to work to continue another 2 hours of not enjoying themselves. So like the neg buddies who talk each other into looking for another job. We're trying to avoid it just being a neg download, and actually let's reframe the things that make us feel negative, and let's start to create far more of a consistent glass half full rather than half empty type of mindset. Like the updates that we see that allegedly job flow is down by 48%. We could dwell on the 48%, or we could enjoy the fact that 52% of it is still there despite everyone being at home. And what you choose to get morose about, or what you choose to celebrate, can sometimes get realigned by a buddy. Sorry, I interrupted you, Taylor. But
no, it's fine. It's a very good point. When Alex said they get it when she speaks to them, I think the idea of a furlough buddy in particular is a great concept, because you can vent or speak to anyone about the situation, but the buddy system allows for someone who is going through the exact same thing. So it's not something I've been lucky enough to have at any of my previous roles. I think it's definitely something we should explore with Trinnovo. But yeah, the fact that the other person is going to be going through or been through recently the exact same sort of thing, that's going to play a huge importance.
Yeah. Something I learned from Hannah Keep, actually, Jeremy, a fair while ago when I was a rookie, was the like the phrase an emotional contract, where the importance of an emotional contract in a lot of things you do in your life as a candidate, and linking it to the buddy and even mentor assistant, to have that emotional contract with somebody. It can be written down, it can be verbal, but it has to be seen that in this relationship, this is what I need from you, and this is what maybe you can expect from me. So it doesn't become a neg buddy, because you would eradicate that from any emotional contract, to then get the outcome that you want, rather than it just kind of see how the leaves fall, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like two buddies should be able to decompress with each other, because that's just perfectly natural to feel like I need to let this out without it being judged. Because I'm not going to phone my manager to say, I just want to talk to you about a couple of the things that you've said this week, because they pressed some buttons for me and you need to know this. But I might want to talk to my buddy about this and this and this, and then I feel better for it, and then we can go back to being Captain Positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do find that with a buddy, it's almost like taking turns. I find that I'm more pessimistic and negative about myself, but if my buddy had a problem, I'd be like, no, come on, you got this, you can smash it. You're that positive person for the other person, but then sometimes you need that. So no, you're right. We're always more pessimistic about ourselves than other people as well.
And if we seek out the wrong person, and we end up in that neg cycle, it pulls you down. A buddy should help create some buoyancy.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the difference between a buddy and a mentor, then we've talked about it. We've talked about it a little bit. So the buddy, potentially more of a peer; mentor, potentially someone who's walked a path that you may want to walk. So to somebody, if we were to give advice one by one to somebody who has never thought about having a mentor, and would potentially, some people might see it strange, like, why would I speak to somebody outside of my company, of someone I've never spoken to before, and ask them for help in my career? Like, if you write it down, it can be seen as different if you've never explored it. So I'll start with you, Taylor. I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but if you were to think what would be the greatest benefit to you as a mentee to have a mentor that potentially has walked a path you want to walk, what would you say is the main benefits of that?
I'd probably say distance from your current work. So this mentor, if he is a completely disparate entity who has no involvement in your work or your day-to-day kind of activities, being able to ask them questions which you may feel penalized for asking people in your company, questions where you feel you may get quite a generic answer from your company as opposed to the real one. And it's a chance to ask someone something which is completely unfiltered. They're not going to have judgment over the fact you've asked the question, and their answer is not going to be filtered to align with corporate aims. It is going to be purely a knowledge request and transfer. So I'd say that for me would be the biggest benefit. I mean, I've not had a mentor. It's definitely something after this I'd go out and consider speaking to more people in the industry and trying to find somebody suitable.
Absolutely. Yeah, that unbiased, no incentive for them kind of impartial advice is something you may trust more than someone internally that you feel may have an agenda, a good or bad agenda. And I guess what you're saying is it's hard to know if they have an agenda, depending on how close they are. But somebody externally, unbiased, no incentive for them to offer you the wrong advice. Yeah, it's good. Alex, I don't know for you, what would you say my Alexa lit up then? What would you say is the greatest benefit to somebody having a mentor?
It does give you a goal. Just thinking, yeah, this is where I would want to be. one day. And then for me, it would probably have to be someone that I'm genuinely interested to see what they've done. And then actually, I was thinking about it just now. I would want someone or a mentor who has failed a lot of times, like a lot, because they would have gone through some stuff, you know, and then they'd be able to advise, you know, really, really well, and can tell you what their life experience was. So I guess it's just it's them explaining their life experience and how you can go about your own way, with your own vision and your own plans, but knowing that someone else has kind of done it and has been successful, and it's okay to fail.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. You I think you're only really going to learn from somebody who's made mistakes along the way. You typically may not learn anything if you're speaking to someone who's never failed and everything's been so easy for them. So yeah, it's a good point. Jeremy, from your side, obviously having had a mentor in a capacity you spoke about earlier, what would you say is a generic bit of advice, the benefit of having a mentor?
Be clear on what you want to be mentored for, whether it is skill or it is about a journey or arriving at a destination. So if you want to be mentored for a skill because you know that you could become better at making a sales call or winning business or writing a piece of software, then a skill-based mentor relationship is a different type of mentor compared to one day I would like to own my own business, or one day I would like to have financial independence, or I would like to be able to become better at communicating with people, where you're more looking for somebody who's going to bring soft skill type mentoring or journey-based mentoring.
Absolutely, yeah. It reminded me of a time a candidate actually said to me that he went for 3 interviews, never got any of the jobs, but went back to every single person he was interviewed by, and asked them to be his mentor. Went back and said, I really enjoyed the interview. I really enjoyed what you're doing. I was really impressed by what you've done in your career. Would you mind being my mentor in helping me get to a point like that? And it was a junior developer, and one of the CTOs he interviewed with said yes, and hadn't spoken to him for a few months now. But about 3 months ago, last time I spoke to him, they'd been having a mentor relationship for a year, and he'd helped him get a job elsewhere. And it's funny with the opportunities that may crop up to get a mentor. May already be in front of you, but without having that mindset of, oh, maybe I need a mentor for this, you never foresee those opportunities.
No, that's it. Yeah, I work with a recruitment agency who facilitate mentor-mentee relationships within their marketplace. So they have around a dozen senior managers who've agreed for their own personal development to become mentors for others within their profession in other businesses. So they match the right mentors to the right mentees to be able to help bring through the professional development of others without I think the word you used was that agenda of, if you feel like you're being mentored by your own manager, whether it's there or not, there's sometimes the question mark around what is the agenda for this advice. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think if everyone after this I challenge everyone now that after this, if you can think of 2 names at the top of your head that you think, do you know what, yeah, I reckon I could really get some value from this person, and just ask them if they could mentor you. I've already got it in my head with someone.
You should say it now, Alex, because on this platform, it's going on YouTube after, you'll hard to say no.
Yeah.
No, I won't put her on the spot like that, but I am going to. So yeah, if you can think of 2 people, then this has been great.
Yeah.
Is she a salsa dancer by any chance?
Sorry?
Is she a salsa dancer? Is that what you're aiming for?
No comment.
And then other tips then in terms of finding that mentor. I know here at Trinnovo, we have a big focus on networking. typically face-to-face. At the moment, we've done a lot of online webinars. A bit of advice I would give generally is to put yourself in those situations as often as you can, and that may arise opportunities to find a mentor, whether you're looking or not. Like-minded people, thought leaders in your subject matter. Could be something, it could be a networking event, totally left field to what you do for your day-to-day job, but putting yourself in those environments, I guess, will help with opportunities of finding the right mentor.
Yes. Yeah, and I'd recommend looking at things like exhibitions and expos and conferences, and look at the speakers who are being invited to speak, because I'm sure that somewhere within those people there are individuals who would happily mentor somebody else.
Absolutely. Right, I think that is us. I think we're done with questions from the audience. I don't know if anyone's got anything that we've missed off, any golden nugget of information that they want to wrap up with.
No?
Jeremy Snell, you have been a pleasure, sir. Thank you ever so much for
Thanks for the invite.
Partaking. Our first celebrity guest on our Chirica session. So yeah, thank you everyone to tuning in. We will be looking at hosting these every other week. So keep out. Follow myself, Alex Taylor on LinkedIn. Follow Trinnovo on LinkedIn for our next webinar. Again, thank you, Jeremy. Please connect with Jeremy if you haven't done so already. And yeah, the recording will be, as all recordings, will be on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to go back and look at ones we've already done on recruitment, on interview tips, and other recruitment specific topics. And again, thank you. Stay safe, stay home, and see you all soon.
Cheers, guys.
Guys.
Bye, guys. Bye.